This is Newsroom. Hello and welcome from Johannesburg here in South Africa. My name, of course, is Evan Jansen. The show is live, broadcast from our studios in Auckland Park. We're also streaming live on YouTube right now, with our whole show is always available on demand on our YouTube channel. Now today, we look at the standoff that's developed between the City of Cape Town and the Minstrels Association there. The rape case involving tennis legend Bob Hewitt is before the courts again today. South Africa's campuses are mired in chaos, and we ask the question why. Also, we'll close with a look at our complicated relationships with sharks. Those are the sharks in the oceans, mind you. But first, today's news from Katrina Miller.
Well, hello and welcome to Newsroom. I'm Katrina Milan, and let's just take a look at those top stories this morning. Political parties are expected to raise several issues during today's State of the Nation debate in Parliament. These include the blocking of cell phone signals ahead of Sona, the chaos that broke out in the chamber, Eskom's load shedding and the economic situation. The Chief Whips Forum held an extraordinary meeting yesterday to address Thursday's events and try to preempt similar scenes for later today. According to reports this morning, Economic Freedom Fighters MP Andile Mtama has been suspended from the EFF for bringing the party into disrepute. Mtama was due to give another press briefing later today after his attempt at a press briefing failed last week. Reports indicate that today's briefing will still go ahead despite his suspension. Academic activities remain suspended at all TUT campuses until further notice due to widespread protests. The university initially suspended academic activities at 4 of its campuses last week. They have since been advised to leave their residencies for their safety. Students have been demonstrating over funding shortages from the National Student Financial Aid Scheme. Meanwhile, yesterday at a Cape Peninsula University of Technology, a student was hospitalized after chaos erupted between protesting students and campus security guards in Bellville. Protesting started last week after more than 10,000 students were still not registered for classes. It's not yet clear whether schooling will start today at over 140 schools in Malamulele in Limpopo. Residents have called off their protest, but for some learners who were supposed to start their matric supplementary exams yesterday, this could not happen due to the ongoing shutdown. The learners are eligible to rewrite various subjects after failing the 2014 final exams, but were unable to register as residents in the area embarked on violent protests demanding a separate municipality since the beginning of the year. Then moving to the court, former Grand Slam tennis champion Bob Hewitt is back in the High Court in Johannesburg, sitting in Palm Ridge. The 75-year-old stands accused of 2 counts of rape and 1 of sexual assault dating back to the 1980s and 1990s. Last week, the court heard testimony from 3 of Hewitt's alleged victims, Teresa Tolkien, Sue Ellen Sheehan and a 3rd woman. The defense is expected to call 2 journalists who had conducted interviews with one of the alleged rape victims. Moving to Africa, Nigerian soldiers have recaptured 2 towns from Boko Haram as US and regional troops began war games in neighboring Chad in a growing international campaign to counter the Islamist group. In Cameroon, the country's army claims that they have killed more than 80 Boko Haram militants and detained 1,000 people suspected of links to the group. Also in Niger, more than 160 people are also being interrogated with suspected links. New Zealand made it 2 wins out of 2 in Pool A with a 3-wicket victory against Scotland in Dunedin, chasing Scotland's modest total of 142. New Zealand needed only half its overs to reach the target, but lost wickets at irregular intervals in an undisciplined run chase. Well, remember, all those top stories and more are all available on our Newsroom Facebook page. You can then also keep up to date on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Evan, back to you.
Thanks, Katrina. Since the start of 2015, the City of Cape Town and the Minstrels Association have been at loggerheads, seemingly. Began with the annual Minstrel Parade that had to be postponed due to a number of reasons. Tour de Nivea was this year only celebrated on the 17th of January. Now the standoff between the 2 groups has reached fever-pitched again, when the city this weekend accused the minstrels of breaching an interdict that prohibits big troops from doing their traditional laps of honour in the Boer Cup, saying they've received complaints of noise and safety concerns. The ANC in the Western Cape has also weighed in on the matter, questioning the city's true motives. Well, we are joined today by the Western Cape ANC leader, Mr. Marius Fransman, as well as the City of Cape Town's mayoral member of Tourism and Events, Gareth Bloor. Very good morning to you, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
Mr. Bloor, if I can start with you, can you just go back to the weekend's proceedings and clarify to us why the city applied for an interdict to stop a traditional parade that's always happened in the first place?
Well, the city has certainly supported all traditional parades, and what we require are effective planning mechanisms for when we have these parades. So that requires an events application, which we're always very keen to receive, so we can provide the logistical accommodation, toilets that are required and other related logistics to make an event a success. And what we have to do is, of course, understand that there have been several complaints received from residents of the Boerkaap, a very historic community that themselves have been a part of the minstrel heritage. And so I think the key here is to balance the rights of all parties and to actively promote the minstrels as we do, but ensure that we can do that effectively so we have the right infrastructure in place to support events. So really the interdict was not about marches, but illegal marches, and we remain committed to getting marches on the go and supporting this as we've done. The minstrels are the single biggest beneficiary of the events budget if you look at events we support, and there are over 1,500 across the city annually. So we're committed to that, but of course it's got to be done in a way that promotes minstrels to the best effect possible, and that means working within the structures that exist so we can maximize the success year in and year out.
Mr. Fransman, you've openly questioned this interdict. Can I ask you for a response to what Mr. Bloor just told us?
Well, what we've just heard from Mr. Bloor is absolute a lie. The reality is that there was complaints of some white landowners and property owners in that area. What we've seen since Wednesday last week, the total clamp down from J.P. Smith, a councillor in the area responsible for safety and security, that decided that he's going to use the force in the system of the security of the city to try and create havoc amongst the minstrels. This thing is coming for more than 100 years. Suddenly, I hear Mr. Bloor talks about illegal march in the Boerkaap. The reality is noise pollution, but when these property owners that got nightclubs in Long Street, in Wells Street, in Strand Street, because they're white, they do those things, then it's a non-issue. The reality here is Mr. Bloor and the City of Cape Town has stopped the Tweede Nuwejaar from happening. They basically made sure that there's a clampdown. They've now tried to suffocate the culture of the minstrels and our heritage. What we've seen, even under Helen Zille's reign when she was the City of Cape Town mayor, she in fact tried to stop entry, unless Mr. Bloor say it's not true. She tried to stop entry to the Boerkaap march from Wales Street to town. So what we've seen is the last few years onslaught onto it. What we are calling on the City of Cape Town to do is to accept that the culture of the coloured community is also the culture of South Africa. That the fact that there was more than 100 years of slavery don't make our people to feel like slaves still. And that is the fundamental contradiction that we've got here.
That deals with the interdict and the marching into the city. I want to go back to Mr. Bloor quickly and talk about the other issue that surfaced. The city's also asked now for an investigation by the public protector, mind you, and we don't even know if the public protector has jurisdiction in this matter, into the finances of the minstrels. Can you tell us why now you need an investigation into the minstrels' finances?
Well, part of any agreement, it's a case of the minstrel leadership providing details to demonstrate the support that was allocated indeed has gone to the beneficiaries, which are the minstrel group themselves. And that is simply a requirement of any good governance, is to ensure public funds are applied and spent on their stated objective. And of course, when we considered the minstrel application, we were told when we allocated an amount of 6 million with the province that this was the only source of funding, and should we not come to the table, and we have every year and we would always, but should we have not done so, this event would have fallen flat. And of course, subsequently, a minstrel group did apply to the lottery for funding, and it was demonstrated that tens of millions had already been allocated. The question is, what has happened to the money? And we simply want to ensure that money that is allocated and must be allocated is spent on its stated objective, which is the promotion of an event that is a critical part of the identity of Cape Town, and certainly so many of the peoples of Cape Town. It's celebrated, and we need to continue to have it as an iconic event, not only for South Africans, but for people across the continent. And certainly this issue of complaints coming only from one group is completely incorrect. If you look at the record of complaints coming from within the Boerkaap, it's certainly from ratepayers associations, ordinary residents, people who enjoy the minstrels, but who object to an uncoordinated way in which these activities take place, which don't lend itself to the promotion of this event annually and the promotion of the culture and the heritage that's associated with the minstrels. So I certainly don't think it's in any way racist to ensure that money that's applied for and is allocated is then accounted for, so we have a justified basis to continue our support and to keep on promoting one of the best events that is on the calendar in South Africa, and also an event that we continue to allocate more funds to than any other event. And as I say, we've got hundreds and leading into thousands per year. We're proud of our support, but we've got to make sure that the money goes to those minstrel associations and groups on the ground, and that's the key. And it's part of the agreement that the money be accounted for. It's part of the law of South Africa that you've got accountability. That's the basis for good governance, spending public funds and making sure it gets to the people.
If I can go across to Mr. Fransman. Mr. Fransman, I'd like your response to that within the context of the city giving money at the beginning of this year to the minstrels. Now they want this to be investigated. How do you view this and your response?
It's important that good governance, accountability, and checks and balances, we must understand actually it was brought in by the ANC government. That is the bottom line. Prior to 94, you had a smoke screen of governance, but actually people were ripping this country apart by the apartheid state. What we are having now is the hard reality even that beginning of this year, the city decides to give funding, little as it was, to the minstrels. But guess what? Whilst they are giving the funding, they immediately ask for accountability, and they immediately ask for the books. Whilst the contract with the minstrels talks about March, they must give responses in March. So what we've seen here, we've seen a heavy-handed approach by the city of Cape Town, in fact, by the mayor, that goes havoc against the minstrels. Why? Because the minstrels decided to walk on the 10th of January. Whilst they were instructed by the city of Cape Town to walk on another day, they decided to go to the ANC celebrations. That's the fundamental contradiction here. We are saying to the DA that it is wrong to use state power to create a serious siege on them. The minstrels will account, and they must account. That's a separate issue. The ANC is not the minstrels. What we are also saying, the public protector should not be used in this political fight that the city of Cape Town has with the minstrels, because the public protector must rather investigate and come forward with a report of 400 million rand stolen from the state coffers by the likes of companies like Volcon, which the city of Cape Town and Mr. Bloem must answer. In Manenberg, in the Nova Park, and in Atlanta schools, and the flats that are not built, money went from the city of Cape Town coffers, money went from the provincial government, more than 300 to 400 million rand. Why are they not asking for accountability? Is it because Volcon is essentially funding the Democratic Alliance? That's the contradiction that we've got here. Here's a small group of people, Cape Flats communities, essentially have created genocide under apartheid. Now they must again feel victimized. It's wrong, Mr. Bloer. What we actually expect you to is to investigate Volcon. Please tell the community of Manenberg why those flats are not completed. Please tell the community of Atlantis why the schools is not completed. Please tell us, is the DA being funded by Volcon?
First of all, if I can come in on that.
Yes.
Great. I mean, the issue here, we have a blurring of issues. This government has a record of complete accountability, clean audits year in, year out, exemplary. Even the president's own reports indicate service delivery at the highest level and top outcomes within the city of Cape Town and within the Western Cape broadly. So the issue around expenditure on certain projects are investigated as required and put across whenever. This 400 million issue is completely unrelated to the minstrels, and we'll happily investigate that.
No, but now why don't you investigate? Why don't you now immediately
city continues with its
why
checks
don't
and
you
balances.
agree? Wait, why don't you agree, Mr. Bloor, to actually now tomorrow open a case at the public protector?
We are more than happy
against,
to look
will
into
you do it,
absolutely
yeah?
any
Will
issue,
you
and
do,
you're welcome to go to the public protector too.
Will you ask
the fact is that
you
this
saying,
case,
no,
we're
tell
happy
me,
to look
Mr.
into
Bloor,
that issue
are you saying,
and any other issue.
Are you
this
prepared
is the first that I hear for
to
you
say,
raising
no,
this.
400 million rand between the city and province, are you prepared that must go to the public protector for investigation?
The city is very happy for the public protector
to investigate. So will you now
it.
go and lay a charge
We're absolutely happy. And we've, on any complaint received from companies, especially on the stadiums, it's the city of Cape Town that was the first in the country to instigate proceedings to look into the cronyism that happens when it comes to construction of major projects across the country. Mayor Dillon instigated that.
In this case, the mayor,
that across
the mayor,
country, which was then subsequently followed up on. So let's get back to the minstrels issue, because the facts speak for themselves as far as the city of Cape Town goes.
Am I right that in the
city of Cape Town minstrels issue relates to auditing financial statements for the minstrels as for any other organisation for which a contract is issued. And the public protector is welcome to investigate that.
Is it true that in the city of Cape Town, Mr. Bloor, that there's a contract that the minstrels must account in March? Is that true or not?
It is true that there's a contract that exists for which the minstrels need to account, but the city has to respond by the date at which by the date at which people are supposed to receive their funding. There's a date for an overall final report, a final report that is exercised. What we need to do is deal with service providers who've approached the mayor now, saying they have not received fund payment yet for services rendered. And the critical issue with that is that people still are still waiting on their accounts. So what we're asking for here, in the case of the minstrels, is simply that we receive, as per the contract, within our request, an account for the funds spent based on complaints, which is in the contract. If complaints are received, we can request information relating to payment of service providers. It's in the contract. That's what we've done. And the second issue is to request the lottery funding issue be looked at, given that it's come to our attention, tens of millions of rands of lottery funding have also gone into this event. Why has that not been accounted for? Why have the communities not seen the benefit? Lottery funding is funding allocated to support an event that was not public, was not visible. The minstrels themselves discovered this was an issue and have come to the city, and we're simply calling for an investigation. If there's any other matter that wishes to be brought forward, let the public protector investigate it. We open ourselves daily to requests for investigation. Every single time we see it and say, absolutely, we're open, our books are open. What happens? Year in, year out, it comes out clean. The city of Cape Town is the only government that is consistently clean with audits where money is spent on what we say it's spent on and not stolen from the poor.
I thank you, Mr. Bloor.
Effect amounts to. And that's what we're looking for.
Mr. Bloor, I thank you for wrapping it up there for us. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. Very lively debate this morning. Thank you for joining us. We will continue this discussion around the audit and the minstrels. Hopefully, when the report comes out, we'll have the Minstrel Association in here later in the week to try and represent their side of the story. But I thank both of you gentlemen for joining us. That's the ANC Provincial Leader, Western Cape, Mr. Marius Fransman, and then the City of Cape Town's mayoral member for tourism and events, Mr. Gareth Bloor. I thank you, gentlemen, for joining us this morning. Now, there you have it. Lively this morning. Let's take a look at your tweets. Remember, at SABC Newsroom. Now, these are some of your views with regards to the Hendrik Lemmer says, the Cape Minstrels got 50 million from the Lotto board. So many riders can go race worlds and in Europe on that. How much did you get, Cycling SA, he asks. Gavin Koppel says, now money allegedly missing that was allocated to the City of Cape Town Carnival and Minstrels. Does it ever end South Africa? It's a little bit early to judge, Mr. Koppel. Of course, we've just heard the full report will be available in March, and then we can make a decision on whether money was actually embezzled, not unaccounted for, and the like. Wimbaye says, Cape Minstrels, lottery money missing. The public protector said to investigate. We don't even know if the public protector has jurisdiction in this matter, Mr. Bloor. There you have a lovely picture, traditional Tweede Nuwe Jaar celebrations in Cape Town. Today's tweet of the day comes from Asipe on the TUT strike. Now, this is an ongoing story. It says this thing must come to an end, that institutions must focus on academics. It's a disgrace to the Republic of South Africa. Yes, it is a sentiment that we agree with today. We must educate our children. It is the most important thing that we should focus on here in South Africa. It's education. Time for us to take a short break. This is Newsroom on SABC News.
Zoom into Africa. This is Malawi. The president is Professor Peter Mutharika. Malawi got independent from the United Kingdom on 6 July in 1964. The population is more than 15 million people. One of Malawi's major languages is English. Monetary unit, Malawi Kwacha.
Welcome back. This is Newsroom on SABC News. The rape trial of former tennis champion Bob Hewitt resumes in the High Court, sitting in Palm Ridge today. The 75-year-old stands accused of 2 counts of rape and 1 of sexual assault dating back to the 1980s and 90s. Last week, the court heard testimony from 3 of Hewitt's alleged victims, as well as their families. Now, joining us for discussion on the merits of this case is legal expert Alton Hart, who's from the University of Johannesburg's Law Clinic. Good morning, Alton. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Eben, and thanks for having me.
This is an interesting case. We've seen a couple of these cases now around the world with accusations coming out many, many years afterwards. Let's start with this particular case. What's your view on it within the legal framework?
Eben, from a legal perspective, it's pretty normal for victims of crimes of sexual assault or rape, as it was called in the old days, that people would come out of many, many years after the incident that has happened, especially when you have like victims that were minors at the time of the incident. So it's not a new thing, it goes unreported in our legal system that we don't hear about it very often, but these things happen on a daily basis, and it's one of the things that we as lawyers have to deal with.
How do you test this kind of case, though, with so much time that's elapsed? And so much water under the bridge? How do you test it? What does the law say?
Eben, very recently in 2009, the Constitutional Court actually made a ruling in the Els case, which stems from the Northern Cape, actually, where they looked at certain factors. They look at the length of the delay, the nature of the offense, the trial prejudice to the accused. But in that case, the judges also in the Constitutional Court also looked at the public interest in that when they look at trial prejudice. So it's not just one tier test. There's 4 factors that they have to look at to see if it's in the interest of justice to stay prosecution. Because an accused can just not come and say that the length of the delay, it's maybe the pre-trial delay, but the delay in his trial was not that long. Because the victims came out and the trial immediately resumed. So the delay in the trial should be, if you look at the Constitution, Section 35, 3D, then something different is applicable here. Maybe the witnesses, then the judges would look at the credibility of the witnesses and those kind of things if they make a value finding on the evidence that is placed in front of court. So it's not really the delay, it's maybe the pre-trial delay here.
In this particular case now, we see the letters, of course, that were written, and then also the witness testimony will be very, very important. How do you view this particular case with the witnesses and what you've seen come out so far?
The thing is, like with the witnesses, one should also not forget the fact that these were single events, if one can call it like that. Yeah. It's not that the one victim knew of the other victim. They were like victims in different scenarios. So the court needs to apply the cautionary rule. You're looking at the evidence in compartments, one can say. But there's also something in the law of evidence which states similar fact evidence, where the court can look. But then the accused attorneys can argue that it's not in the interest of justice and fair trial because these are unrelated incidences where you can bring similar fact. But if the prosecution is clever enough, they can try and slip it through that gate to actually show that this accused has a pattern or a habit of doing things.
And let's talk about the credibility of a witness. How credible is your witness testimony, say, 30 years later?
It can still be credible. It depends on how the witness, the judge, when the judge looks at certain things, the judge look at how the witness is behaving in the witness box, the demeanor, and also recalling of the events. They won't expect the witness to actually remember the detail in precise, but certain events, if it just corroborates and it makes sense, it's a plausible witness statement that is given, then the judge can't find that it's an uncredible witness. We need to look at the accused's answer to these events. Yeah. And there the court will look at finding who's the more credible witness in the instance.
In the one witness's case here, Sue Ellen Sheehan, she had no relationship with her parents, who to this day refuse to believe her about the rape allegations. How is this kind of thing viewed within the context of this case?
The thing is, like, one need to, as I said earlier, we need to look at the witnesses individually because it's individual cases. And if the parents don't want to believe the witness, sometimes it's very difficult for kids. And it's exactly like if you look at the third victim's case, where she was too afraid to tell her parents about this because she feared rejection. And that's normally when minor victims don't tell, and that's when the secrecy and denial comes in, where they blame themselves for what happened. So one should also be very cautious of this. And I also heard in the news, and I didn't dig too deep in it, where parents came and said that she's a pathological liar. Yeah. And one needs to treat that evidence with caution, and the judges needs to most probably examine this and see if this is really true, what the parents has put before court, and if it's not true, then they should deal with it in a specific way.
Conclusion, what about precedent? We've seen these kind of cases pop up around the world. In Britain, they had a case with celebrities, Jimmy Savile and the like, who were drawn into sort of child sex rings and so forth. We've had the high-profile Bill Cosby case. As the person who is accused, it really ruins your reputation. Whether you are innocent or found guilty, the damage lasts for the rest of your life. What kind of recourse do you then, as the victim, have in a case like this?
Obviously, civilly, you can actually claim damages for your reputation, but I mean, no amount of money can actually restore your reputation. Once it's out there, people always have this perception in their brains, maybe subjectively, that you this type of person. So even if you can claim millions and millions of rands from the complainants, it will never fully restore you. And this can be seen from the previous matters that we dealt with, like Oscar Pistorius. It was also similar. Damage has been done to the reputation of the person. So it's not, money cannot really, it's sometimes like a lesser value, but money can't restore the reputation. It's gone. Luckily for some of these guys, they're already in the late stages of their careers, so there's nothing really that they can monetarily still lose. It's only their reputation, their good name that they had for 40, 50 years.
And your good name has no value?
It does have value, but I mean in the entertainment industry where these guys most probably found themselves, I mean 75-year-old, 80-year-old, he's not going to play tennis anymore, so...
Yeah, that's where one questions the fairness of this kind of scenario, because whether you find guilty or innocent, the reputational damage is irreplaceable. You can't, it's irrevocable, really. But Alton, thank you for coming in today to talk to us about this. Very few people wanted to touch the merits of this case, really. So thank you very much for coming in and putting it into a legal framework for us. That's Alton Hart, who's a law expert from the University of Johannesburg's Law Clinic. Thanks.
Thank you, Evan.
Quick look at your tweets. What are you saying? What are you saying about this matter? Is it this matter? Well, let's have a look at what's on Twitter. Here we have Lorata Raputo saying, big up to the SRC for consistently protesting for what they feel is right. Hashtag TUT strike. This is the third week of the TU strike. Can it end already? Says Chumela for 6th of February. So TUT is striking. That means I will play GTA be online whole day. Let me know if you want me to join you. If you're a student, your spelling is not going to get you through university. First year at Stellies, first year at University of KwaZulu-Natal. Now, doesn't that paint a picture for all of us here in South Africa to see and to understand? Those are some of your views. Really powerful imagery there that we've found on Twitter there. The difference between the two campuses at the beginning of the academic year is quite marked, isn't it? Well, we stay on education subject. Hundreds of thousands of candidates around the country started their supplementary matric examinations at various centres around the country yesterday. The exams will run until the 24th of March, but for the 350 learners of Malamulele, though schooling is expected to return to normal today, it is too late for them. Learners were not able to sit for the examinations yesterday due to ongoing protest action in the area that affected more than 140 schools. Residents are demanding a municipality separate from that of Thulamela. A similar fate befell the learners from John Taolo Khatsewe around Kuruman in the Northern Cape, who couldn't write their final exams last year. The 486 learners finally have a chance now to make up for the lost time and opportunity. 8 high schools near Kuruman were prevented from writing following the closure of their schools by irate community members who were demanding a tarred road. Some learners have, however, decided to repeat grade 12 on a full-time basis. Now, the Acting Chief Director, Media Liaison, National and Provincial Communication at the Department of Basic Education, Elijah Mhlanga, joins us this morning. That title's gotten a lot bigger since I last time spoke to you, Elijah.
No, it's always been like that, yeah.
Okay. Just tell us, how did the first day of examinations go? Give material of the problems that we see around.
The first day went very well. We have a small number, 85,000. So it's easy to manage that because in some schools we have 2 learners writing, in others it's 7 or 10. So it's manageable. But as for the Malamulele situation, it is not too late because yesterday it was computer applications technology. And the information that we have indicate that none of the learners there had registered to sit for that particular subject. And today as well, it's IT, and none of the learners there are writing today. So there was no damage. Only tomorrow that they will be writing accounting, and we are prepared for that. The question papers are already in the vicinity of the schools, and so they will write. So none has lost the opportunity to write. So our focus now shifts to the entire system there in terms of grade 1 to 11.
You talk about tomorrow is a red letter day, if one can say that, in Malamulele. You talk about your guys being prepared for it, but protests continue. What does that preparation look like other than just making sure that the exam papers and the like is there? Are you looking at things like security, maybe?
Of course, the province has put together a comprehensive plan that looks at curriculum coverage, security, and emergency measures that we can put in place, because remember some schools were satellite and damage has been caused. So now they're busy assessing the damage and the cost thereof, but at the same time looking at the possibility of bringing mobile classrooms to accommodate those learners. So it's a whole range of plans that are being considered because we want to be able to cover the 4.5 weeks in lost time that we have incurred. And we need to make sure that we move as quickly as possible. Everyone that's involved, teacher unions, the community members, education officials, the security cluster, everyone must come together so that we restore education services as well as other services in the area, because the shutdown did not just affect education, but it affected life in general, including business as well. So we're working together and we want to make sure that life returns to normal as quickly as possible.
Let's move to the Northern Cape now, and if you can give us an update with what's happening at John Taolo Khatsewe in the Kuruman area. What's your expectation there?
Well, the expectation is that all the learners that were supposed to have sat for the final grade 12 examinations last year are supposed to be writing as from yesterday. But the difference is that with them is the entire examinations, because they didn't even sit for one paper. So now we're expecting them to take this opportunity, which is their first opportunity, by the way, to sit for the examinations. And we're expecting them to do that. And we haven't received any reports of any disruptions or problems in that area. And we hope it will remain the same until the 24th of March when the examinations are completed.
Now, there's in the Northern Cape, learners have also been implicated in some places, mass cheating they talk about. What's it, the Pixley Kaseme district. They'll have a chance to rewrite exams. How does that process proceed?
What happens is that if you are suspected and you're under investigation for irregularities, that includes group copying, for example, the regulations allow you to sit for the examinations, and whether you get the results, that will depend on the outcome of the final formal hearing decision to say, are you guilty or not? If you are guilty, then even the results of your supplementary examinations will be blocked and withheld and nullified. In fact, meaning that you'll have to sit for the examinations again. If you are banned for a year, if it's 2, then you'll have to sit for 2 years without writing the examinations. But if it's 3, then you'll have to sit for that entire period. So it all depends on the nature of your offense and the extent of your involvement in it. So we have had those pockets of problems in some provinces, but not to the extent as we've seen in the Eastern Cape and KZN.
That's what I wanted to ask you about the report, Eastern Cape, KZN. I think last number I saw was 58 centres implicated. When are we likely to see this report and then what the kind of action that will come out of that report?
Very soon. On the 24th of February, we are beginning with the formal hearings. And those implicated persons will be invited. In fact, letters are going out as we speak, notifying them of the dates and venues and how they should prepare for this. So they will have to come present their case. And then on the basis of what they tell us and what we have as evidence, a decision will be made. But we expect to complete this within a month. So by the end of March, we expect the entire process to be completed so that perhaps first week, second week of April, we announce the outcome.
Well, Elijah, thank you very much for joining us today. That title is so long, I'm not going to read it again. Elijah Mhlanga from the Department of Basic Education. He's the Acting Chief Director, Media Liaison, National and Provincial Communication.
Spokesperson.
Thank you for joining us today. Always willing to come in and tell us what the very latest is. That's what transparency is about. After all, education is the most important cog in the wheel of South Africa that we are trying to build. Today's picture comes from Student Village on strike at the University of KZN, a familiar scene in quite a few universities across South Africa. There you have strike at the University of KZN West getting really serious. Are you there? Let us know what's happening, says Student Village. There you see it looks more like a war zone than a campus where people are about to embark. They're about to embark on starting the academic year. Well, you're watching Newsroom. Time for us to take a short commercial break.
We kick off this week's show by seeing how Kenyans are paying tribute to the victims, as well as not only how they've coped, but how they returned stronger after the attacks.
Last year, images of the 4-day Westgate Mall attack saturated front pages.
In the Democratic Republic of Congo, artists have assembled to celebrate the peace this war-torn country has not had in a long time.
No conflict that can't be solved without a conversation.
The Journal, every Saturday at 1:30 on SABC News.
Well, hello and welcome back. You're with Newsroom on SABC News. Let's just recap those top stories this morning. Political parties are expected to raise several issues during today's State of the Nation debate in Parliament. These include the blocking of cell phone signals ahead of Sona, the chaos that broke out in the chamber, Eskom's load shedding and the economic situation. The Chief Whips Forum held an extraordinary meeting yesterday to address Thursday's event and try to preempt similar scenes for later Jan. According to reports this morning, Economic Freedom Fighters MP Andile Mhatama has been suspended from the EFF for bringing the party into disrepute. Mhatama was due to give another press briefing later today after his attempt at a press briefing failed last week. Reports indicate that today's briefing will still go ahead despite his suspension. And academic activities remain suspended at all TUT campuses until further notice due to widespread protests. The university initially suspended academic activities at 4 of its campuses last week. They have since been advised to leave their residences for their safety. Students have been demonstrating over funding shortages from the National Student Financial Aid Scheme. Now remember, all those stories and more are all available on our Newsroom Facebook page. You can then also keep up to date on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Evan, back to you.
Now, lectures remain suspended at the Tshwane University of Technology. Students say they are demonstrating in solidarity with the thousands who are unable to register this year. Now, classes have been suspended at all campuses after student protests erupted over insufficient funding from the National Student Financial Aid Scheme last week. Now, we invited TUT spokeswoman Villa de Ruyter to the show. We are yet to hear from her. But joining us today in studio to give us the latest around the situation, well, it's the Secretary General of the South African Students' Congress, Luzuko Buko. Good morning, Luzuko. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Good morning.
Yesterday's demonstration seemed to be peaceful at TUT's campus, main campus that is. What are you hearing from the students today?
Basically, the students are saying they're going to intensify the protest because the institution had issued an instruction for their removal from the campus, which is the same case in the University of KwaZulu-Natal as well. Our comrades are saying that they are intensifying the protest and they are going to resist being forcefully removed by the institution. So that is the situation. The demonstration in the main campus of TUT yesterday, we cannot call it a strike yet. We believe that the strike in the main in TUT was happening in the Shoshanguve and the Harangua campus.
When you say intensifying the action, what does that mean? Violent protest, more violent protest? And how can you start an academic year as students on that sort of note?
It is our wish that we do not start that way. But the reality of the matter is that we are forced to opt for such a situation due to the lack of funds that are there in the system and the nature of the student debt that is there, and the challenges that we are having on student accommodation, because even some students who got entrance in the universities, they are having to squat and sleep in libraries because of the lack of student accommodation.
How does it help then to burn university cars and university property and destroy campuses? How does that help you as the students? And how does that benefit you?
No, we believe these are our universities, and we do not promote their burning and the destruction of property, because we believe that as primary stakeholders of these institutions, we are supposed to be the protectors of the property of the institution. We actually know people who vandalize our institutions is police with rubber bullets when they shoot us all over campus, destroying windows and damaging property. But we, as students, as student leaders, we do not encourage the vandalism and damage to property. But we cannot deny that sometimes some elements of terrorism penetrate our protests sometimes. That's why you get people who want to destroy the cafeteria, take money from the vending machines and so on and so forth, not necessarily addressing the questions of students.
So you say there's a criminal element that is opportunistic in this scenario. But now last week, let's go to TUT. Last week you met with management, met with student leaders. You've met again, and it seems like these meetings are not bearing any fruit. What exactly is your expectation?
No, we are hoping, for instance, that the management now will get to his senses, pull in some funds from the institution, and we are going to still struggle to get NSFAS to commit more money and government to commit more money to fund the students that are affected by the shortage of funds and the students that are having the challenges of debt. But we are hoping that the resolution to close down the campus is not an attempt to stifle any form of discussion between student leaders and management, because when the campus is reopened, you are still going to face the same situation of the campus being, of those students being affected by those challenges of NSFAS.
Now, if we talk about the outcomes that you hope to achieve, which is education after all, for all, and good education, tertiary education, you say that there's a criminal element that's opportunistic when they start destroying property and so forth. Is it then not your duty as the South African Students' Congress to make sure that your members are clear about what kind of protest action is expected and how this process should be taken forward?
No, we do educate our members on the forms of protest that must be that we must engage in as structures, and we actually charge and suspend people who violate property, who vandalize property, mostly those who are coming from SASCO, because we believe we are the primary stakeholders of these institutions, and we ought to protect these institutions and their integrity and their stature in the country and internationally. Now, when their property is damaged, it takes us a bit back. And it actually affects our qualification as well as students. But we actually want to deal with the criminal element. We plead also with our comrades to identify that criminal element and isolate it.
Thank you. You need to do more. You need to do more to get rid of the criminality. It's your responsibility. You need to do more. And you need to do more to stop the violence on the campuses, because it's counterproductive. At the end, it's about getting young people educated and having a better future for all of us in South Africa. We can't be burning our campuses. We can't be breaking down our campuses. And you can't say, we see these people, but we can do nothing. You have to do something.
Yes, but our government and our institutional managers need to do more in injecting funds and making the process of registration as smooth as possible. And we cannot say we will defend people who vandalize and the violence in the protests.
It doesn't matter what. It doesn't matter what. It doesn't matter what the heads of argument are, Luzuko. The point is, we cannot burn our campuses, and you have to stand up and you have to be seen to condemn these people, and you have to be seen to bring those criminal elements to the fore.
No,
thank you for joining us.
But if you are closing your eyes, you won't see. But we are doing that.
We've run out of time, but we are going to talk about this thing again, because we can't be burning our campuses, Luzuko. You understand what I'm saying. That is the Secretary General of the South African Student Congress, Luzuko Buko, and we're talking today about the chaos that's around a whole host of our campuses. We can't burn our campuses. We're burning our future, Luzuko. I thank you for joining us.
Thanks.
Let's confess, ever since Steven Spielberg brought us his Oscar-winning film, Jaws, we've all had an underlying fear of the monsters of the deep. So much so that we often imagine only the worst scenarios when heading to the beach. Last week, social media was buzzing after a beachgoer posted on his personal Facebook page a video showing what he referred to as sharks having a feeding frenzy at Muizenberg. What shocked viewers even more were the two surfers that decided now would be an appropriate time to go for a swim. The prevalence of sharks has kept Cape Town shark safety programs like Shark Spotters on their toes. However, we're slightly too paranoid when it comes to shark attacks. or are those fears valid? Well, here to answer all the questions, Sarah Worries, the project manager at Shark Spotters. Good morning to you, Sarah. Within that context and what happened last week, what do you say?
Well, it's very difficult because with the video last week on Sunday the 8th, we did have a shark sighting at the time. We had cleared the beach. We'd called all the people out of the water. But at the same time, there was a school of dolphins coming past feeding on mackerel. And what the guy who took the video saw was actually the dolphins feeding and not sharks. So there was an assumption that because the siren had gone off, there was a shark feeding frenzy, when in actual fact, the shark was casually moving past the area and it was the dolphins that were feeding.
How often do you have these kinds of red herring scenarios play out? Is there mass hysteria around sharks?
There's not really mass hysteria, but it definitely is something that concerns people who are on the beaches. And, you know, rightly so, people must be aware of shark risk in Cape Town, but they also must realize the risk is very small. So what we tend to find is that you have two groups of people. You have the people who are absolutely terrified. If you even mention the word shark when they get to the beach, they'll pack up and go away. And then you get the people who have a more balanced approach, and, you know, they'll wait. If we clear the beach when there's a shark sighting, they'll wait, let the shark spotter track the movements of the shark away from the area, and then let the people go back in the water afterwards.
Where are we in the process with protecting both sharks and humans in this space?
Well, in Cape Town, we're quite far advanced compared to areas in the rest of the world because we really have a philosophy of trying to find a balance between people and sharks and not sort of playing one off against another. So we recognize that people have a right to use the ocean and for recreation in Cape Town. Obviously, we all enjoy being here on the beaches. But also that, you know, sharks, white sharks, great white sharks are an important part of the ecosystem here. And so we do need to protect them to a certain extent. So with the shark spotting program, we balance safety with research, and we're trying to find a balance between people and sharks that protects them both.
Well, Sarah, we've run out of time here this morning. I thank you for joining us. You guys are doing fantastic work, though, on the Mother City's beaches. Thank you once again. That's Sarah Worries, who is the project manager at Shark Spotters in Cape Town. That's where we wrap it. Newsroom is broadcast live from our studios in Auckland Park, Johannesburg, every weekday morning between 9 and 10 a.m. The show repeats at 2 in the afternoon with a total rebroadcast at 5 a.m. the following morning. We also stream live on YouTube at that time, but our show is always available on demand on our YouTube channel. This is SABC News. You've been watching Newsroom. We love it in the morning.